The restaurant buzzed with quiet elegance. Crystal chandeliers glowed overhead, casting soft light on polished tables and well-dressed guests. A man in his 60s, sharp in a tailored suit, swirled the wine in his glass, half listening to his business partner. Then, a small voice cut through the chatter. "Sir, my mom has a ring just like yours." The billionaire lowered his glass. A girl, no older than 7, stood at his table, eyes wide, her little hands clutching a worn-out teddy bear. She pointed at his hand. He frowned and glanced down. A platinum ring, his family crest engraved on it, gleamed under the chandelier. For a second, he couldn't breathe. The room seemed to shrink around him. The ring was one of a kind. Custom-made. Only one other person had ever owned it. And that person had been dead for years. Silence settled over the table. The little girl stared at him, waiting. His business partner cleared his throat, shifting in his seat. "Excuse me, young lady," the billionaire said, his voice steady despite the storm in his head. "What did you say?" The girl's grip tightened on her teddy bear. "My mom has the same ring." "That's impossible," he said before he could stop himself. She blinked, confused. "But she does. She wears it every day. She never takes it off." A waiter, noticing the conversation, stepped forward. "Sir, should I?" The billionaire raised a hand. "It's fine." His gaze remained on the girl. "What's your name?" She hesitated. "Sophie." "Sophie," he repeated, forcing a smile. "And your mother's name?" "Emma." His stomach twisted. The name hit him like a punch. Emma. It couldn't be. The past came rushing back, memories he had buried. A woman with soft eyes and a quiet laugh. A secret he thought had died with her. And now, standing in front of him, was a little girl claiming her mother wore his ring. He forced himself to stay calm. "Where is your mother?" Sophie glanced toward the entrance. "She's outside. She said I could come in and ask for a glass of water." The billionaire exhaled slowly. "Wait here." He pushed back his chair and stood. His business partner raised an eyebrow, but he ignored him. He crossed the restaurant, his heart hammering in his chest. At the entrance, he scanned the crowd. His breath caught. A woman stood near the sidewalk, her back turned. Dark hair fell past her shoulders. She wore a simple dress, nothing fancy. But there was something familiar about her posture. He stepped forward. "Emma?" She turned. And the world shifted beneath his feet. It was her. Emma. Alive. Emma's face paled when she saw him. She grabbed Sophie's hand, ready to run. "Wait." His voice cracked. "Emma, it's me." She hesitated. Tears burned his eyes. "I thought you were dead." Emma's lips parted, but no words came. Sophie tugged at her dress. "Mommy, do you know him?" Emma swallowed hard. Then, in a whisper, she said, "He's your father." A gust of wind rushed through the city street. But the billionaire didn't feel it. His body had turned cold the moment Emma whispered those words. "He's your father." Sophie blinked up at her mother. "What?" Emma's hand trembled as she held on to Sophie. Her eyes darted around, searching for an escape. The billionaire, still frozen in shock, forced his voice to work. "Emma." He took a slow step forward. I don't understand." "I thought you were." She pulled Sophie closer. "We need to go." "Wait." His voice broke. "You can't just walk away." "I need to know." He turned to Sophie, his own daughter, standing there with confusion written all over her small face. "I need to know the truth." Emma clenched her jaw. A taxi pulled up near the curb. She grabbed the door handle. "Emma, please." He was desperate now. "At least talk to me." She hesitated. For the first time, she met his eyes. He saw pain there. Deep, unspoken pain. Sophie looked between them. "Mom?" Emma exhaled sharply. Then, in a quiet, strained voice, she said, "Fine. But not here." The billionaire nodded quickly, afraid she'd change her mind. "Come with me." Emma hesitated again, then gave a small nod. 30 minutes later, a private suite. They sat in an upscale hotel lounge, away from prying eyes. A fireplace crackled in the corner, its soft glow casting shadows across the room. Emma sat stiffly in an armchair, arms crossed, eyes guarded. Sophie sat beside her, sipping hot chocolate a waiter had brought. The billionaire sat across from them, hands clasped. He stared at Emma, searching for answers. "Tell me," he said. "How is this possible? How are you alive?" Emma's gaze dropped to her lap. She let out a slow breath. "You really want to know?" "Yes." His voice was firm. Emma looked up, her eyes sharp. "Then listen carefully. 12 years ago. Emma had been a different woman back then, young, hopeful, in love. She and the billionaire had shared something special, something real. But then everything fell apart. I was pregnant," she said, her voice hollow. "And I was terrified." The billionaire's breath hitched. He had never known. "You left on that business trip," Emma continued. "And while you were gone." She swallowed. Something happened. She clenched her fists, as if holding back a memory too painful to relive. "They came for me." His pulse quickened. "Who?" Emma's face darkened. "Your family." The billionaire's blood ran cold. He had always known his family was ruthless. Controlling. But he had no idea they had done this. "They told me you wouldn't want a scandal," Emma continued. "That a child outside of marriage would destroy your reputation. They said you'd never choose me over them." "And they?" Her voice broke. The billionaire leaned forward. "Emma. They made me disappear." Silence. A deep, crushing silence. The billionaire's hands curled into fists. "What do you mean, disappear?" Emma let out a bitter laugh. "They paid me off. Threatened me. Told me if I ever tried to reach you, they'd make sure I regretted it." His stomach twisted. "They forced you to leave?" Emma nodded, her expression unreadable. "They gave me a choice. Take the money and disappear, or suffer the consequences." The billionaire felt rage rise in his chest. "And you believed them?" Emma's eyes flashed. "What was I supposed to do? I was alone. I had no power, no money, no protection. And I was pregnant." His heart shattered. She had been carrying his child. And he had never known. He exhaled, his voice barely a whisper. "So you took the money and ran?" Emma's jaw tightened. "I didn't take a single cent." He blinked. "They wanted to buy me off, but I refused. So they made my life hell instead." Her voice wavered. "I had to hide. I had to disappear. Not because I wanted to, but because I had no choice." The billionaire felt sick. His own family had done this. "Emma, I swear." She shook her head. "It's too late for apologies." His gaze shifted to Sophie. Their daughter. 7 years. 7 years of birthdays, of scraped knees, of first words and bedtime stories. He had missed everything. Emma must have seen the pain in his eyes, because she softened. "I never planned to tell her," she admitted. I wanted her to have a normal life. Away from all this. She gestured around, at the luxury, the wealth. The world he had always belonged to, the world that had nearly destroyed her. The billionaire swallowed hard. Then why did you come back? Emma hesitated. And then, for the first time, she looked afraid. She glanced at Sophie, then lowered her voice. Because someone found us. The billionaire's spine straightened. What do you mean? Emma's grip on Sophie's shoulder tightened. They know about her now. His blood ran cold. Who? Emma's lips pressed together. She shook her head. I don't know. But someone's been watching us. A few weeks ago, I noticed a car following us. Then, last night, someone broke into our apartment. Nothing was stolen, but... Her voice trembled. They left a note. She reached into her bag and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. She placed it on the table. The billionaire smoothed it out with shaking hands. There were only 3 words written on it. We know everything. His chest tightened. Emma watched him carefully. Do you understand now? This wasn't just about the past. This wasn't just about their broken love story. This was something bigger. Something dangerous. And whoever was behind it. They weren't finished yet. The billionaire's fingers tightened around the note. We know everything. 3 words. Simple. Direct. But they carried a heavy, dangerous weight. Emma watched him closely, her eyes scanning his face for any sign of understanding. You have to believe me, she said, her voice firm but laced with fear. I wouldn't have come back if I had another choice. The billionaire swallowed, his mind racing. Who else knows? Emma hesitated. I don't know. But someone out there is watching us. And I can't protect Sophie alone anymore. Sophie, sitting quietly between them, clutched her hot chocolate, her small hands wrapped around the cup like it was the only warmth in the room. She was only a child. She shouldn't have to be caught up in this mess. The billionaire exhaled sharply. He had spent years building an empire, fighting off rivals, handling million-dollar deals, but none of it had prepared him for this. His daughter. A hidden past. A threat he didn't understand. He lifted his gaze. You should have come to me sooner. Emma scoffed, crossing her arms. And say what? Hey, remember me? The woman your family erased from your life? Surprise, I have your daughter. What exactly did you expect? He clenched his jaw. She had a point. But now, none of that mattered. The only thing that mattered was keeping them safe. He leaned forward. Did you go to the police? Emma let out a bitter laugh. And say what? That some mysterious person left me a note? That I think someone followed me? She shook her head. I don't have proof. They'd tell me I was being paranoid. He thought for a moment. Then we find out who's behind this. If someone's watching you, I'll find them. Emma frowned. How? The billionaire pulled out his phone and dialed a number. The line rang twice before a deep voice answered. Sir? Lucas. I need you at the Grand Royale Hotel. Now. Understood. Emma raised an eyebrow. Who's Lucas? My head of security. She stiffened. I don't need your security team involved. You don't have a choice, he said firmly. If someone's after you and Sophie, I need the best people on this. Emma hesitated but didn't argue. Minutes later, the door opened, and a tall, broad-shouldered man in a black suit stepped inside. Lucas. His gaze swept the room, assessing the situation immediately. The billionaire handed him the note. Find out who left this. Check hotel security, street cameras, everything. Lucas gave a single nod. On it. He turned to Emma. Did you notice anything unusual before the break-in? Emma's fingers tightened around Sophie's shoulders. A car. A black SUV. I saw it a few times, but I thought I was imagining things. Lucas took out his phone and typed something. I'll look into it. As he left, Sophie finally spoke. Are we in danger? The billionaire's heart clenched. She was just a little girl, yet her voice carried a wisdom beyond her years. Emma hesitated before answering. No, baby. We're just being careful. Sophie looked up at the billionaire. Are you gonna help us? He met her eyes. His daughter's eyes. Yes, he said. I won't let anything happen to you. That night, the billionaire didn't sleep. He paced the hotel suite, phone in hand, waiting for updates. Emma and Sophie were asleep in the adjoining room, but he knew Emma was only pretending. She didn't trust him yet. He couldn't blame her. His family had destroyed her life. But now, things were different. Now, he knew the truth. And he wouldn't let history repeat itself. His phone buzzed. A message from Lucas. Got something. Meet me downstairs. The billionaire grabbed his jacket and headed down. Hotel parking garage. Lucas stood next to a sleek black car, his expression unreadable. Pulled the security footage, he said. Found your black SUV. The billionaire's pulse quickened. Whose is it? Lucas handed him a tablet. Plates were covered, but I traced its route. It was parked near Emma's apartment for weeks. And it wasn't just watching her. The billionaire frowned. What do you mean? Lucas zoomed in on a still image from the footage. Look at this. The billionaire's breath caught in his throat. The SUV wasn't just watching Emma. It had also been watching him. It had been parked outside his office. Outside his mansion. Following his every move. His jaw clenched. Who the hell is doing this? Lucas's voice was grim. Whoever they are, they've been watching both of you for a long time. The billionaire exhaled sharply. His worst fear had just been confirmed. This wasn't just about Emma. This wasn't just about Sophie. This was about him. Someone wanted something. And they were playing a long, dangerous game. Find out who owns that car, he ordered. Trace every possible lead. I want answers. Lucas nodded. Already working on it. As the billionaire turned to leave, Lucas spoke again. Sir, there's one more thing. The billionaire stopped. What? Lucas hesitated before pulling up another image on the tablet. This footage was taken 3 nights ago. Right before Emma's apartment was broken into. The billionaire's blood ran cold as he stared at the screen. It was a blurry figure, standing near Emma's building, wearing a hood. But even through the poor quality footage, there was something familiar about them. The billionaire's stomach twisted. He knew that person. It was someone from his past. And suddenly, everything became a lot more personal. The billionaire stared at the blurry image on Lucas's tablet, his grip tightening. He knew that person. Even through the poor quality footage, the posture, the stance, it was unmistakable. Someone from his past had returned. Lucas watched his reaction closely. You recognize them? It wasn't a question. The billionaire exhaled sharply, his jaw clenched. I need a clearer image. Lucas nodded. I'll enhance it. But if this person is tied to the break-in and the threats, we're dealing with something bigger than we thought. The billionaire already knew that. He turned to leave but stopped. Keep digging. Find out who owns that black SUV. I want answers tonight. Lucas gave a curt nod. Understood. The billionaire stepped into the elevator, his mind racing. Whoever that person was, they weren't just watching Emma. They weren't just watching Sophie. They were watching him. Upstairs, hotel suite. Emma was awake when he walked in. She sat on the couch, arms crossed, tension in every muscle. What did your guy find? He hesitated. We're still looking into it. Emma narrowed her eyes. Don't lie to me. The billionaire sighed. Someone's been watching all of us. Not just you. Not just Sophie. Me too. Emma's breath caught. Who? I don't know yet. He hesitated. But I will. Sophie stirred in her sleep, curled up on the bed. The sight of her made something tighten in his chest. Emma followed his gaze. You think this is about you? It has to be, he admitted. I've made enemies in business. But this feels personal. Emma studied him for a long moment. And what if it's about me? The billionaire frowned. What do you mean? Emma shifted uncomfortably. Before the break-in, I got a phone call. A voice I didn't recognize. They didn't say anything, just breathed into the phone. His stomach twisted. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because I didn't trust you, she snapped. Then her expression softened. And because I was scared. The billionaire ran a hand through his hair. Did the police trace the call? Emma let out a bitter laugh. The police didn't care. No threats, no crime. Just a prank call, they said. His fists clenched. Someone had been stalking her. Watching her. Following her. And the police had done nothing. Not anymore. Not while he was here. I'll have Lucas trace the call, he said. We're going to find out who's behind this. Emma hesitated. And then what? He met her eyes. Then we end it. She exhaled, rubbing her arms. I still don't understand why anyone would target me. The billionaire's jaw tightened. Because you have something they want. Emma frowned. Like what? The billionaire looked toward Sophie. Her. Emma inhaled sharply, realization dawning. You think this is about Sophie? It makes sense, he said. She's my daughter. And now that people know, they might see her as leverage. Emma shivered. God, I hate this. You're not alone anymore, he said quietly. We'll protect her. No matter what. Emma didn't answer. But for the first time, he saw trust flicker in her eyes. An hour later, Lucas's update. The billionaire's phone buzzed. Lucas. He stepped into the hallway before answering. Tell me you have something. I do, Lucas said grimly. We enhanced the image. You need to see this. The billionaire's chest tightened. Send it to me. A moment later, an image appeared on his phone. And his blood ran cold. The face staring back at him was one he hadn't seen in years. A man from his past. Someone he had thought was gone. Someone who had no reason to be anywhere near Emma, Sophie, or him. Nathaniel Pierce. A name that sent a sharp wave of unease through him. Lucas's voice was tense. I looked into him. He disappeared 5 years ago. No record of him anywhere. But now, he's back. The billionaire's grip tightened on his phone. I need everything on him. Every detail. Every move he's made since he vanished. Lucas hesitated. There's one more thing. What? Lucas exhaled. We traced the black SUV. It's registered to an offshore shell company. And guess who the CEO is? The billionaire's stomach dropped. Nathaniel Pierce. Silence. Then, the billionaire exhaled sharply. Find him. Lucas's voice was grim. Already on it. The past, a betrayal. Nathaniel Pierce wasn't just an old business rival. He had been family. Once. The billionaire had trusted him, let him into his world, his empire. Until the betrayal. Until Nathaniel stole from him. Lied to him. Until he disappeared, before the billionaire could destroy him. But now, Nathaniel was back. And he was after Emma. After Sophie. After something bigger. The billionaire felt a surge of rage. Nathaniel thought he could come back into his life, threaten his daughter, his family. No. He wasn't going to run this time. This time, he was going to fight back. The billionaire stared at Nathaniel Pierce's name on his phone screen, his mind racing. He had spent years erasing every trace of that man from his life. And yet, Nathaniel had returned. Not just to haunt him, but to destroy him. Lucas's voice cut through the silence. What do you want me to do? The billionaire exhaled sharply. Find him. I don't care what it takes. Lucas hesitated. Are you sure? If he's been in hiding for 5 years, there's a reason. Digging too deep could set something off. The billionaire's grip tightened on his phone. He made the first move. Now, I'm making mine. A pause. Then, Lucas's voice turned steely. Understood. I'll have an update soon. The billionaire ended the call and turned back to the hotel suite. Emma sat on the couch, her arms wrapped around herself, watching him. She had heard everything. Emma's fear. Emma's voice was quiet. Who is Nathaniel Pierce? The billionaire's jaw tightened. An old enemy. Emma's eyes didn't leave his. And now he's after Sophie? His stomach twisted. I don't know yet. Emma let out a sharp breath, her hands trembling. Why is this happening? First, the break-in. Then the SUV. Now this man from your past. What does he want? The billionaire hesitated. He wasn't sure of the answer yet. But one thing was clear, Nathaniel wasn't back for no reason. Emma pushed off the couch, pacing. Sophie is just a child. She has nothing to do with whatever happened between you and him. The billionaire knew that wasn't true. Sophie had everything to do with it. She was his daughter. And that made her a target. His hands curled into fists. I won't let anything happen to her. Or to you. Emma let out a bitter laugh. How? You don't even know why he's watching us. The billionaire stepped forward. Then we find out. Emma swallowed hard. And if he's dangerous? The billionaire's eyes darkened. Then I end it before he can touch either of you. Emma flinched at the coldness in his voice. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, a small voice interrupted. Daddy? The billionaire turned. Sophie stood in the doorway, rubbing her sleepy eyes. Emma immediately rushed over, kneeling in front of her. Sweetheart, what's wrong? Sophie sniffled. I had a bad dream. The billionaire crouched down beside her. What about? Sophie hesitated. Then, she looked up at him. There was a man, she whispered. He was watching me. A chill ran through him. Emma's face paled. What did he look like? Sophie shook her head. I don't know. But he was scary. The billionaire exchanged a look with Emma. This wasn't just a dream. Sophie had sensed something. And he wasn't going to ignore it. He gently lifted Sophie into his arms. You're safe. I promise. Sophie buried her face in his shoulder, her tiny hands clutching his shirt. The billionaire met Emma's eyes over Sophie's head. No more waiting. No more reacting. It was time to end this. The next morning, Lucas's update. Lucas didn't waste time. We found him. The billionaire sat in the back of his car, staring out at the city skyline. Where? Lucas's voice was sharp. Nathaniel's been hiding under a different identity. He owns a private security firm in the city. The billionaire's grip tightened. Security firm? Lucas nodded. And guess what? That firm has contracts with high-end clients. Powerful people. People who could make someone disappear if needed. The billionaire's stomach twisted. Nathaniel wasn't just back. He had power now. Connections. And that made him dangerous. Lucas continued. I also traced the black SUV. It's registered to a company under Nathaniel's firm. Which means he's the one who's been watching Emma and Sophie, the billionaire finished. Silence. Then, Lucas's voice dropped. There's more. He's been meeting with someone. The billionaire's jaw tightened. Who? Lucas hesitated. I don't know yet. But I pulled some security footage from a private club downtown. Nathaniel met with a woman last week. The billionaire's heart pounded. Send me the footage. A few seconds later, his phone buzzed with an incoming video. He clicked it open. The screen showed a dimly lit restaurant. Nathaniel sat at a table, his face partially obscured by shadows. Across from him sat a woman. And when she turned slightly, the billionaire's entire body froze. Emma gasped beside him. Because the woman in the video was Sophie's grandmother. Betrayal runs deep. Emma's face went pale. No. That's not possible. The billionaire couldn't tear his eyes away from the video. Sophie's grandmother, Emma's own mother, was sitting across from Nathaniel Pierce. Talking. Laughing. Conspiring. Emma's breath came in sharp gasps. My mother wouldn't do this. She wouldn't. The billionaire's voice was ice. Then explain why she's meeting with a man who's been stalking your daughter. Emma's hands trembled. Maybe it's a coincidence. It's not. Emma flinched. The billionaire exhaled sharply, trying to rein in his anger. Emma, listen to me. You told me you and your mother don't speak anymore. That she walked away after you got pregnant. Emma nodded weakly. Yes. She said I ruined my life. That I should have given Sophie up. The billionaire's hands curled into fists. And now she's meeting with him? His voice was dangerously low. This isn't a coincidence, Emma. She's involved. Emma shook her head, her eyes glassy. I don't understand. Why would she help him? The billionaire had a terrifying suspicion. Sophie. Emma's breath hitched. Your mother wanted you to give Sophie up, he said slowly. What if she never let go of that idea? Emma swallowed hard. You think she's helping Nathaniel to take Sophie away? The billionaire's stomach churned. If Nathaniel wanted revenge, and Emma's mother wanted Sophie out of Emma's life, then they were working together. And that meant Sophie was in more danger than they ever realized. The billionaire stood abruptly. We need to get ahead of this. Now. Emma's voice wavered. What are you going to do? He looked at her. End this before they make their next move. The setup. Lucas's voice was sharp through the phone. I have an address. Nathaniel's security firm has a private office downtown. The billionaire's voice was cold. Set up a meeting. Lucas hesitated. You sure about this? If you walk in there, you're stepping right into his world. The billionaire's jaw tightened. Then I'll make sure he remembers whose world this really is. Lucas exhaled. I'll make the call. The billionaire turned to Emma. You stay here with Sophie. No matter what happens, don't leave this hotel. Emma's hands trembled. What if you don't come back? He hesitated. Then, he reached out, cupping her face gently. I will. Emma's eyes searched his, fear and trust battling in them. Then, she gave a shaky nod. The billionaire turned toward the door, his mind clear. Nathaniel had made his move. Now, it was his turn. The billionaire sat in the back of the black SUV, his eyes locked on the glass skyscraper ahead. Nathaniel Pierce's private security firm. A fortress in the heart of the city. Lucas's voice crackled in his earpiece. You sure about this? No turning back once you walk in. The billionaire's voice was cold. I'm counting on that. He pushed the door open and stepped into the night. It was time to end this. The confrontation. The billionaire entered the building, his every step echoing through the dimly lit lobby. A receptionist glanced up. Sir, do you have an appointment? The billionaire didn't slow. Tell Nathaniel Pierce his old friend is here. The woman hesitated, then hurriedly made a call. Moments later, a set of double doors at the end of the hall swung open. And Nathaniel Pierce stepped out. Time hadn't changed him much, sharp suit. Cold smile, the same calculating eyes. Nathaniel spread his arms. Well, well. I was starting to think you'd never come. The billionaire stopped a few feet away. Cut the games. Nathaniel smirked. Straight to business? Fine. Let's talk in my office. The billionaire followed him inside. The room was sleek, floor-to-ceiling windows, expensive leather chairs, a bar stocked with aged whiskey. Nathaniel gestured to a seat. Drink? The billionaire didn't sit. I know you've been watching Sophie. Nathaniel's smirk widened. Such a smart little girl. Looks just like you. Rage burned in the billionaire's chest. Why are you after her? Nathaniel leaned back. Do you really not know? The billionaire's hands curled into fists. Enlighten me. Nathaniel's gaze darkened. Because she was never supposed to exist. The billionaire's breath stilled. Nathaniel leaned forward. 5 years ago, I warned you. I told you that if you kept that child, it would destroy everything. Your legacy. Your future. Your name. The billionaire's jaw tightened. And I made my choice. Nathaniel's eyes flashed. And now you're paying for it. Silence stretched between them. Then, the billionaire spoke, his voice dangerously low. You had my hotel suite broken into. Nathaniel shrugged. I needed to know how attached you were to her. You nearly ran her off the road. Nathaniel chuckled. Just a little push. A warning. The billionaire's hands shook with rage. You met with Emma's mother. Nathaniel's smirk faded. Ah, the billionaire murmured. Not so smug anymore, are you? Nathaniel's jaw clenched. That woman came to me. Not the other way around. The billionaire's eyes narrowed. Why? Nathaniel exhaled. She still believes Sophie was a mistake. And mistakes should be corrected. A wave of fury crashed through the billionaire. Nathaniel's voice dropped. She gave me something. Something valuable. The billionaire's chest tightened. What? Nathaniel smiled. A DNA test. The truth unfolds. The billionaire stilled. Nathaniel reached into his desk and tossed a file onto the table. Go on, Nathaniel said, his voice smug. Open it. The billionaire's hands clenched. He stepped forward, flipping the folder open. Inside. A single sheet of paper. One line stood out. Paternity result, 99.9% match, Nathaniel Pierce. The billionaire's breath caught. His hands trembled. No, he whispered. Nathaniel leaned in. I'm her real father. The billionaire's mind raced. You're lying. Nathaniel chuckled. Am I? The billionaire gritted his teeth. Emma told me everything. You and her were never together. Nathaniel smirked. Are you sure about that? The billionaire's chest tightened. No. No, this wasn't possible. Nathaniel's voice was mocking. It must be painful, realizing you raised someone else's child as your own. Rage flared in the billionaire's chest. You're bluffing. Nathaniel lifted his hands. Believe what you want. But the truth is right in front of you. The billionaire forced himself to stay calm. What do you want? Nathaniel's smirk faded. Sophie. The billionaire's blood ran cold. Nathaniel's voice hardened. I want my daughter. The final decision. The billionaire's heart pounded. Nathaniel leaned forward. Give her up, and I walk away. No more threats. No more danger. You go back to your perfect billionaire life. The billionaire clenched his fists. And if I don't? Nathaniel's eyes darkened. Then I take her. And you won't be able to stop me. Silence filled the room. The billionaire stared at the DNA test. At Nathaniel. At the past 5 years of his life. Every bedtime story. Every scraped knee. Every whispered, "Daddy, I love you." And in that moment, the billionaire knew the truth. DNA didn't matter. Blood didn't matter. Sophie was his daughter. Nathaniel's voice was calm. Make your choice. The billionaire exhaled slowly. Then, he met Nathaniel's gaze. You want Sophie? His voice was dangerously soft. Come and take her. Nathaniel's smirk wavered. What? The billionaire stepped closer. I don't care about your test. I don't care about the past. Sophie is mine. Nathaniel's expression darkened. You really want to go to war over this? The billionaire's lips curled into a cold smile. I already have. The aftermath. Nathaniel never got near Sophie again. By the next morning, his security firm crumbled. His contracts were revoked. His allies disappeared. And within weeks, he was nothing but a ghost. Emma's mother tried to fight, but the billionaire's legal team made sure she never had another say in Sophie's life. And as for Sophie, she never knew the war that had been fought for her. All she knew was that her father never left her side. And he never would. Because family wasn't about blood. It was about love. And that was something no DNA test could ever change.